Welcome to Around the Blockchain. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Perfect. Adam, welcome. Thank you for jumping on Around the Blockchain. If you can just introduce yourself to the viewers for me.
Oh, hi Ryan. My name's Adam Poulton. I run a business called Get Paid in Bitcoin. Registered the domain like quite a long time ago because I saw the potential of this space, and we're just launching now essentially a couple of years ago, and we've really got a strong aim to get Bitcoin out into the hands of more and more Australians, just in their everyday life.
Yeah, absolutely. And when, sorry, did you launch Get Paid in Bitcoin?
I registered the domain in 2013.
Oh, wow.
So a long 8 years ago, like it essentially sat there and did nothing for several years, and then by luck and happenstance, I run into a fellow called Lucas Cullen. We became business partners, and he had the skills in coding websites and coding client portals and coding the Bitcoin code that we needed to work with this new technology. All skills that I didn't have. And so we teamed up, got to building about 3 years ago, and we've been out, with beta clients essentially for a couple of years. And about a year ago, we built the site again from the ground up, just so that it could scale. And we're at that stage now, so we're essentially relaunching, and it's exciting time to be relaunching actually.
Yeah, absolutely. Right in the middle of the bull cycle.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
you got into, Bitcoin and blockchain around about the 2013 mark. How did you sort of stumble across Bitcoin and obviously crypto itself?
Yeah, I'm sort of old enough now to have lived through the global financial crisis. I like that was a scary time. There was a lot of stuff happening in the financial world that had never happened before. We're talking 13 years ago now, but I can still remember points in time during that period. And the period went for 2 or 3 years, like where all the big bailouts were happening, and all the dramatic news was on the TV. And I leading into that period, I had friends in the financial industry that were telling me about subprime housing and all this stuff that was starting to make the news, and it didn't make sense to me. I had no idea how it was going to impact me. I had no idea why it would impact me, and I listened with a bit of interest, but didn't really take it too much further. And then a little 6 months, 9 months after that, when actually we started having problems in the Australian economy. I thought, well, I can sit here and just not know and see what happens, or I can actually try to work out what is going on here, because something's wrong. Like, this has never happened before in my lifetime. So I started listening to podcasts. I was lucky enough to do a 2 hour commute once a week down to Hobart, about 2.5 hours drive away. So I used that time to download a whole bunch of podcasts. I'd listen to them on the trip down there and back, and really, got to the guts of what was happening with the financial system, and that led me to all these people that were talking about, what they call the real financial system from before 1971, where it was based on gold and silver, and hard money. And so I started buying gold and silver. I started trying to protect my wealth from possible coming inflation at some point in time, and I just went down that road. And it wasn't too long before these people that were talking about gold and silver were starting to talk about Bitcoin. And I was still very early. Bitcoin back then was super early. But I started to dip my toe in, literally investing a few dollars here and there, and trying to work out, all right, well, I don't think gold and silver can play a part in the global, high tech economy, but I think that Bitcoin can, and it you can move it around easily, whereas you can't move gold and silver around easily, and so that sort of led me down this path of, all right, really learning about how this virtual asset can have value, really trying to understand how it could be secure and not be hacked. Trying to work out how it could actually be a hard currency, even though it was digital, and then, like, following on from that, how do you integrate it into a financial system that doesn't really want you around? And so, all of these sort of questions led me to something like Get Paid in Bitcoin, like a service that would allow people to receive wages in Bitcoin instead of Australian dollars. And I started work on it. I was obviously a decade too early because even now, like, it seems like a really really weird concept, but like, at some point in time, I think everyone will be receiving wages in Bitcoin somehow. And I just want to sort of make that process a little bit quicker and easier. And as you know, with Bitcoin, the earlier you get in, the seem to be the better you are off.
Absolutely, yeah. Look, you mentioned a few interesting things there. So you got in 2013, sort of sat on the idea for a little while. A couple of years go by, and then you obviously, decide to start kicking things off. Why did you get into that sort of space within, I guess, the Bitcoin ecosystem? Obviously, there's a lot of different moving parts of the Bitcoin ecosystem itself.
Yeah.
Like, you probably could have gone down one of the really early investor routes and just invested a whole bunch of money and made a ton of money from that. Or, you could have started to think about maybe going down the route of, building an exchange, something like that. So why did you kind of
Yep.
go down the route of, the Get Paid in Bitcoin sort of route, I guess?
Yeah, I consider that a lot. I mean, there was numerous options. At the time, I don't think I felt empowered enough to or skilled enough to jump on a lot of opportunities that were there at the time. Um, I met people that started exchanges at this exactly the same time, and they had a lot of experience in the financial space. They had a lot of experience with the regulators. They knew how to secure and to run high tech systems. And at that point in time, I was self-employed. I run a trade-based business. I had worked with my hands essentially my entire life, and I just sort of wanted to do something that I felt I could do and felt I could do well. And but I had to team up with people that could code, because I couldn't. And so it took a while, and there was definitely other things I could have done that probably would have been more financially successful. But I'm pretty happy with where I'm at. You know, yeah, it's got my life in Tasmania. I live in rural Tasmania, and yeah, I mean, things are going really well. There's lots of opportunities even now. So it's been good, really, I think, to over the last several years to build up my personal skills and business skills. I think if I jumped in too big too early, I could have easily messed up and gone out the back door, as they say. Um, so so yeah, it's a ride, but it's a ride of personal development, I think, in a lot of ways.
Absolutely. I totally
Mm.
agree. Hey, like, I think the people that, are pretty predominant in the space at the moment, obviously got in quite early, but they have had to ride out a lot of, the bad times as well. Like, it hasn't always just been sunshine and rainbows in the Bitcoin space.
Definitely not. No.
So I think people that got in early and sort of, like you've just said, use this experience as a bit of, self-development, and like a kind of guess a vehicle to understand what's happening, and using it as like a pretty steep learning curve, have ended up coming out the other side of all of that sort of stuff, exponentially better off than people who obviously haven't dabbled in any kind of cryptocurrency or Bitcoin or blockchain, sort of like product or space, I guess.
Yeah,
um,
I mean, you raise a few good points there. I mean, there's a lot of people that got into this space really, really early. Obviously, had no idea about hard currency, and when they'd made a 10x or 20x return in dollar terms, they were out. and they're selling their bitcoins for $1 or $5 or $10. They're kicking themselves now, but they
Absolutely.
obviously didn't see that this thing had legs and could span decades. Um, and you come across these stories all the time. People get super excited, get in early, and then before you know it, they're 80% down, and they're disillusioned. They probably didn't quite know why they got in. They've gone in with this mentality almost that they're going to jump in and just straight line up to $1 million, and they're going to get out. And it take like investing isn't easy, and businesses aren't easy, and you can either sort of jump off and not try to develop yourself, because you've got to be resilient, you've got to be emotionally resilient, you've got to know what you're doing. And like you said, the people that persisted and got through that, are leaps and bounds ahead now. And it's very like nice place to be in.
Absolutely. It's the fastest growing industry, in my opinion, anyway. Anywhere in the world, that emerging technology sort of industry, and Bitcoin in specific, and cryptocurrencies specifically are, one of the most exciting sort of industries to be in. How
Mm.
does the back end of your product work? So um, it integrates with our current sort of, or the mainstream sort of current payroll systems. How does it work specifically?
Yeah, well, our aim going in, and you got to remember this was a few years ago now. We wanted to develop a way that people could get some of their wages in Bitcoin without necessarily, you know, having a conversation with their boss about Bitcoin. So we didn't want to start the conversation with the employer or the boss, and we didn't want them to have to download any Bitcoin software or anything weird. So we made a system that was designed for an individual to be able to come to us, register with us. By completing that registration process, we'd be able to supply them a little bit of information that they then send to their employer. Again, doesn't mention Bitcoin. And when their employer completes those instructions, their wages get split. Some of their wages come to us in Australian dollars, and we complete an automatic exchange process. So we match those payments with our clients, exchange it into Bitcoin, send it out to their Bitcoin wallet on that same day. And so, we just wanted to be that transactional sort of box in the middle that had dollars in, Bitcoins out. And after the initial setup, which only takes like 5 minutes, from every other payday then on, the client would be receiving Bitcoin, every payday, and it's been like wonderfully successful. No employers have said no to this. We've had a huge number of employers, from small mum and dad businesses up to federal parliamentary payroll, have been completing this process for us, week in, week out, and everyone gets their Bitcoin and everyone's happy. And our clients that have been with us for a few years now are actually seeing the benefits now. They're pretty much all sitting on good gains, and it's wonderful to see the the millions of dollars of appreciation that we've been able to give to our clients.
Yeah, absolutely. I can imagine that would be quite rewarding looking at that. Obviously, you mentioned a couple of good points there. A federally like a federal parliament member gets paid in Bitcoin. You have
Yep.
people all the way down to the mum and dad field. Recently in the news, like NFL, at least to my knowledge here in Australia, isn't massive, but you can see people like Russell Okung getting paid in Bitcoin. There's another gentleman who's just recently come out. I think his name's Sean Colkin, also plays NFL, gets paid
Yep.
in Bitcoin. Is this starting to become more widely accepted and adopted by, not only sort of high profile individuals, but, are you guys, without, naming any names, are you speaking with well-known, organizations or, sports teams, stuff like that?
Yeah, we're having those conversations now. It takes a little while for people to digest these ideas. And like you said, the sports stars in the NFL, the Sacramento Kings basketball side, they're making Bitcoin wages available to all of their staff. And so, we're having those conversations now in Australia as well. And it's exciting. It's just that path of adoption where, essentially at one point in time, no one's doing it. And then all of a sudden you get these few big names, and then everyone goes, yeah, of course that's normal. Let us do it. And so, we're talking to a few really big law firms on the I call it mainland Australia. I don't know if you've talked to many Tasmanians. We refer it to the mainland. So talking to a few large law firms on the mainland about, you know, onboarding their entire company so that all their staff can start enjoying this. And, we're set up for low risk sort of interaction with Bitcoin. We're talking, $5 a payday or something similar. And so to me, it seems like a no brainer. We've got this new money. We've had this new money for over 12 years now. It's not going away. How do I start exploring it? And, getting $5 or $10 or $20 your weekly wages, and starting to learn about how a wallet works, how to secure a wallet, how to do transactions, how to send some to your kids for their pocket money, how to save it for a rainy day, 5 or 10 years down the track. They're all really, really valuable lessons, and that's what I want to be, is a platform that can allow people to start exploring it.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny you mentioned like people are starting to accept this as it's becoming more normal, I guess, especially within mainstream culture. That's obviously done a pretty big 180 since you first started. Yeah, like obviously when you first started, Bitcoin was probably more known for some of its nefarious, I guess, activity associated with the Silk Road and stuff like that. And now obviously people are starting to get more and more educated as the message sort of goes out that that's not the case. That was just one specific use case that someone was using Bitcoin for. That's not what it's actually designed to be done, or sorry, to be used for. Has that kind of been a bit of a funny transition for you to sort of witness, people going from, oh no, that's a scam, that's a Ponzi scheme that's used for, illicit purposes, to now it's like, oh yeah, I want to get on board this, Bitcoin train because, it's not stopping.
Yeah. It's a long process. Like, I still have conversations with people that have been exposed to me and exposed to me talking about this for years, and they might have a little bit, like have zero point zero 0.01 of a Bitcoin, like, which is now what, $800, $1,000, and but they still say to me, oh, well, when can I cash it out so I can use it? And it's almost like they think they've got something that can't be used anywhere except for going through this fella called Adam, and he can get me some dollars, and I can finally do something with it. And it's I'm sort of trying to explain to them that no, like, money changed 10 years ago, and you've now got some of the new money. But people have got a dollar mentality. Like, they think in dollars, and these people have been around, like, dollars have been around their entire life. And so to them, like, I don't know, I don't think they see the change. They see this token that's got a dollar value, and that's about it. And I mean, it's a super confusing space. I mean, even you, like, on your background there, you've got the Dogecoin, and not giving you a hard time, cool background, but people coming into this space say, all right, well, Bitcoin's old, it's 80 grand. There's all these other coins. I'll jump onto one of those, and, like, I don't know, it's almost like a casino, and and I think a lot of people treat it like that. They're like, well, why would I want to get paid in this casino token? I'd just rather, like, gamble, get my money out, like my dollars, and I'll be off. Thanks very much. And so, I think it's going to be a 20-year sort of education curve before people get this. They still look at things like Coinbase listing for $90 billion valuation, one of the biggest banks in the world now. Oh yeah, that's interesting. And then they turn around and walk off. And they don't seem to have understood this trend that's happening now, like, and it's been happening for 20 years, where you know blogs came out, and then all of a sudden newspapers didn't have a business proposition anymore, and Airbnb came out, and now hotels are a bit iffy, and Uber comes out, and then taxis are on the way out, and we're now going through that phase where Bitcoin is turned up, and the traditional financial system is going to have to adapt or suffer declining revenues for the next 20 years. But people still don't see it. They think it's business as usual. There's something interesting over there with Bitcoin. Someone's made a few dollars, and that's about it. So, 20, 30, 40 years time, it'll be a long sort of conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. Those are great comparisons as well. Like I think that's probably one of the better ways to explain to people what Bitcoin actually is doing as a disruptive technology. If you go and mention, like you've just said, newspapers versus blogging on the internet. If
Yeah.
you go and mention Uber versus the taxis running a monopoly on that industry, and now look at that.
Mm.
Look at Airbnb and hotels. Those are great comparisons. This is something very similar, but in my opinion, on a much larger scale and in a much more important area, which is finance, right? That literally affects, every single
Every single
person on the
person in the
planet.
world. Yeah.
Absolutely, every single person on the planet. So I think people, once that penny kind of starts to drop in their mind, they're going to understand like, okay, this thing actually has a massive implication for literally everyone.
Mm.
What have we got? 7.5 billion people on the planet the last time I looked. So
Yeah.
that's a lot of people, right? Like
Yep.
trying to get involved in something like this, is going to be massively important. You mentioned a few interesting points. I wanted to sort of backtrack a little bit about obviously not really how get paid in Bitcoin works, but I can imagine that because you're dealing with a financial product, there's a bunch of hurdles that you would have had to jump over. Can you sort of go through a couple of sort of, I guess, maybe things that you've had to, overcome in terms of regulation and some of the sort of hurdles that you've had to overcome on this
Yeah.
journey?
Yeah, funny you should mention that, because there was an article in the Financial Review today about Independent Reserve, one of the big Bitcoin exchanges in Australia. Um, Now, believe it or not, I I've probably done a very similar amount of regulatory stuff to what Independent Reserve has done. Austrac has a AML's CTF policy that everyone that exchanges digital Australian dollars into digital assets has to comply with. And so that just means we have to know who we're dealing with. Essentially, if the feds knock on the door and they say, "Look, we've got this dodgy Bitcoin transaction over here that we think, is one of your customers," I can tell them who that customer is. So we comply with that. But in this article, Independent Reserve outlined very clearly that they've got over $1 billion worth of assets, which is cash, Australian dollar cash, and cryptocurrency that belongs to someone else, belongs to their clients, under their control. And there's no regulatory oversight of any of that money. It's, they've
Wow.
done the right thing. It's secure, and they've obviously got a scaled up version of what my security is. Our holdings are quite low because we transact all of our crypto straight out to our clients. But we've still got assets, under our control that we have to keep secure, but they've got it on steroids. They've got $1 billion worth, and up until now, or up until this article, regulation has been essentially non-existent. It's a bit of a worry. And so this article was pretty much Adrian saying to the regulators, "Look, we need to be regulated more. We need a bit of oversight. We need to be told what we can do to comply with, world's best standards, so that our clients can feel comfortable, so that the authorities can feel comfortable, and to make the whole industry a bit more respected. Those regulations have to be on the right track, and you can't obviously over regulate very, very small businesses when they're only dealing with, hundreds or thousands of dollars. But there's got to be some sort of pathway in place to make sure that funds are safe and people know they're safe. And we're still, like I keep on saying it, we're still super early into this game. It might be another 5 years before ASIC and the various other banking institutions start wanting to regulate this industry.
Is there
But
more regulation on, sorry to cut you off, Adam, is there more
no,
regulation on the horizon, at least within the Australian space? Like I have heard rumors of, um, you know, policies and stuff starting to, get some legs, especially within,
yeah,
uh,
well, if you look at Blockchain Australia, they've got a regulatory code of conduct,
yep.
and so there's a very clear list there of things that people handling client funds should do, and oversight, auditing by third party people and that type of thing. But it's voluntary. It's something that the biggest do. It's a little bit of a financial burden on a yearly basis, but it's not required. And I think this is what Adrian is saying is, look, once we start reaching these higher thresholds, I don't think it should be a voluntary system anymore. It should actually be required. But at the moment, the regulators don't seem really interested in doing that.
Why is that,
Hopefully,
do you think?
it's an industry that's growing really quickly, so it's caught them off guard a little bit. Even though they've known about it for a little while, like 1 year they'll be talking, about a business that has 100 bitcoins under management and they've got 100 grand, but then 4 years later, that's all of a sudden millions and millions of dollars. And so I think it's caught them off guard. They may very well be of the opinion that this industry doesn't have legs, or it's not going to grow that quickly. But when Adrian's talking now and of his business having $1 billion under management, you fast forward 5 or 10 years, and that could be 100 billion or 500 billion, quite easily. And so, I think they'll start coming and starting the discussion, but it's going to take a little while. But I really think they've got to get their skates on.
Yeah, absolutely. They seem to kind of, for lack of a better phrase or word, they seem to kind of lag behind a little bit. They kind of drag their heels and don't really act super quickly, which to me
Yeah.
is just, I don't know, it just seems a bit, um, not naive, but maybe, I don't know, they just kind of not looking at the space as intently, I guess, as we are. Obviously, we're in the space
Yeah,
every day, right? So,
I'll defend them a little bit as well. I mean, over the last few years, I've started working for a telecommunications business. We're a relatively small business. There's 35 people work here. But I know how hard it is to change systems and processes in this small business. When you start getting up to bank-sized businesses with thousands of employees, I think some of the larger banks have 10 or 15,000 employees. You know, dozens and dozens of systems that may or may not integrate with each other very well. And then you get into the regulators, and obviously they've got to interact with policymakers and governments and the laws, the black and white laws of the country. Changing any of that is a mammoth task. Like, it's huge. And so, people say regulators are slow and cumbersome. That's good sometimes. You want them to be predictable. But even when they do want to change things, it takes a while. And you sort of can't move too quickly sometimes, because even the banking, like I said, the banking industry, hundreds of different systems and applications that they run, they don't talk to each other. And you talk to anyone in IT in a bank and say, all right, we want to get some changes made. It takes years and millions of dollars of development hours. um, you know I, I don't know what the easy answer is, but it is a complicated question, and we sit here sometimes and bag out the regulators and say, look, they're too slow, but I can understand why they're slow. Put it that way.
Yeah, absolutely. Look, I do agree as well, to be honest. I do slag them off a little bit, but I do agree as well. I think it's pretty it's pretty easy to throw mud at something like that. They are huge, and it is going to take them quite a bit of time to, get on board and make these moves that need to be made, which is like you've just said, I think, yeah, probably is a good thing, right? Like they don't, you don't want them to act, be too reactive and just act on a
Yeah.
whim and maybe get something wrong, which could, set the space back
Mm.
quite a bit of time.
But
So
every time you change a tax law or you change a regulatory um, law somewhere, there's winners and losers. There's people that have made decisions based on the regulatory framework at the time, and when something changes, they're all of a sudden either in big trouble because they're not compliant, or they were in a business that wasn't doing well because they had the higher hurdles, and they suddenly got the inside track. Same with taxation. People make business decisions all the time based on tax outcomes, and when you change those too quickly, people have made investments now that are no longer valid investments, and so things do sort of have to change slowly. Which is a worry when we're in this digital economy that things can go 10x or 20x or 100x, like within the blink of an eye sometimes. And I don't know, again, don't know what the easy answer is, because we're hurtling down this digital economy route that isn't going to stop. And I don't know what the answer is.
yeah,
Basically,
I
I,
don't
I
think
suppose
it.
you can. I suppose any business or individual can just do what is right. Not try to abuse the position they're in. Try to be responsible in what they're doing, and try to do the right thing ethically. And if things do change, that they're on the right side of things.
Yeah, absolutely. I don't envy someone in that position. I think doing the right thing is going to be quite difficult. It's going to be hard to get it right the first time as well. So, yeah, I definitely don't envy somebody in that position.
Mm.
What's next for Get Paid in Bitcoin?
Well, we're here for the long term. We're just growing and having the conversation as much as we can. Like I said, we're starting to build out those sort of second layer things where we actually interact directly with the employers rather than the employees. We're starting to build those systems that can actually directly interact with employer payroll systems. So we can they can have essentially a remote application that can update their payroll as required. And it's a big market in Australia. People get there's 10 million people with a job. They get paid every fortnight on average. So it is a big market. There's a lot of adoption to go. If even the optimistic measures say probably 5 to 10% of people in Australia might be considering a crypto investment in sometime in the next 5 years. So we're still super early here, and it's a big marketplace. There's room for a lot of new Bitcoin businesses. I don't think everyone will opt for get paid in Bitcoin. They'll use the Bitcoin ATMs, and they'll use the exchanges directly if they've got the nous to do trading directly. And there'll be people that buy and sell crypto like peer to peer, the old fashioned way. But yeah, no, we're here for the long term. We're here to build a big business and to onboard millions of clients if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. Australia has, yeah, a very like quite a, large, what's the word, like, I guess, market for you guys, and for
Yep.
everyone within the Bitcoin space as well. So, I wish you guys all the best. I think you're doing some great work. Um, where do you think Bitcoin itself is heading at the moment?
What, in the next months or next years?
Like overall sort of macro,
Yeah.
sort of cycle,
Yeah.
like not
Well.
not immediate term, but next year to 3 years to 5 years to 10 years? Where do you sort of see it
Yeah. Well,
going?
I very much look in this 4 year cycle. We've gone through a halving several months ago. We always seem to have a bit of a price rise, multiple times what the previous all time high was. And, we've gone, we're only 3.5, 4 times the last all time high. Um, I don't know if it's going to go a real lot higher than that. Elon took 20% out of the market the other day. It's holding pretty steady, but you know, by all accounts, this time 4 years ago, we were probably starting to be in a bear market. Um, so we might have seen the highs now for another 4 years. Um, Time will tell. I'm not a not a day trader. I'm not a chart analyst by any stretch, but I do know in 4 years' time we're going to be higher than we are now in dollar terms, and that's sort of the horizon I'm building for. I've got get paid in Bitcoin. I've got a few other Bitcoin projects on the go, and they're all focused on the 5 to 10 year range rather than the next couple of months. So
Yeah, awesome. I think that larger sort of time scale is so much better. To be honest, like that's the time frame I sort of have started trying to operate on as well. Like I've tried a few different things within the industry. Like you hear about people making just absurd amounts of money day trading or getting in early on some kind of ICO and stuff like that. So I've tried all that stuff, made a few mistakes here and there, and I just think that the overall, if you just sort of zoom out and maybe have a bit of a longer sort of time frame in mind, I think good things are kind of going to happen, especially from an investment sort of standpoint. Um,
yeah.
have you got any sort of closing thoughts for the viewers at all, Adam?
Um, I think we've sort of touched on most of them. I mean, like I still think most of the people in the space, need to have a bit of a look at financial history and the history of the financial system and the monetary system. I'm quite careful when I talk to try to differentiate talking about currency and money. To me, currency is Australian dollars, US dollars, and money is Bitcoin and gold, essentially. Um, and just by knowing the fundamentals and knowing why they're in this space, answers a lot of questions for them and allows you to sleep at night. And when your investment is down 20 or 30 or 40%, it doesn't worry you because you know why you're doing this. And again, like we've talked about people, like I've met people that have been in the space for 6 or 9 months and actually don't have any Bitcoin, and that amazes me. Like they're researching, they're doing all this analysis about the best time to jump in, and I'm like, that's absurd to me. Risking $10 doesn't seem to me like a big risk. And and people say, oh well, what if I muck up the seed phrase and lose my wallet? And it's like, well, if you're only a few weeks in and only got a few $10 pays, you've lost $50. Like it's not the end of the world. But these same people want to do all this learning and then sort of get 10 grand and lump it all in and invest. And again, it just seems crazy because they sort of pull their hair out when it goes down 5% because they've lost, hundreds of dollars. And so, I'm slow and steady. I still get paid in Bitcoin. I put some of my wages in Bitcoin every week, and it's the easiest and safest and most relaxing way to do it. I think. People asked me about Doge just this morning. Someone asked me about Doge and aren't you angry you missed out on it? It's like, well, not really, because it's had the limelight now for a few weeks, is it?
Yeah, a couple of
It's
weeks,
been
maybe
through
maybe a
the
couple of
roof,
months. Yeah,
but it's not real money. It hasn't really got any inherent value on the cryptocurrency side of things, and I think it was born in 2013 as well, so it's been around for all this time, done nothing. It's had a shot to the moon, and I think it'll die again and just be one of those boring other things that people make a joke about every now and then. But I think there's a lot of people in the space without that education and that knowledge behind them, just because Elon is talking about it, think it's going to be the next reserve currency of the world. and it's not. So
Yeah.
it's education. I think that's probably the key sort of message: education, and do your research and learn about why you're getting into this, and actually do it. It's sort of pretty key messages.
Absolutely, I totally agree with all that as well. Definitely do your own research and start educating yourself. One of the best ways is, like you've just said, is to actually get in and have a, sort of a small play around with Bitcoin itself. If you're risking 10, 20, $30, that shouldn't break the bank.
No,
To
no,
get in, have
exactly.
a play around and just sort of see what it's all about. It's probably the best way to learn. Where can
Yeah.
people learn a bit more about you and obviously your company, Adam?
Yeah, so they get paid in bitcoin.com.au is our website. We're on Twitter so it's at paid in Bitcoin, and I'm on LinkedIn. So if you search around on LinkedIn, you'll probably find me as well. Poulton's a pretty unique name, so there's not many around in the crypto space. So yeah, have a look at all those. I answer all my messages and emails pretty well, so get in contact. I mean, I'd be interested to know how your podcast is going. It's one of the things that I suggest people listen to on their commute or whatever. How's uptake going?
Yeah, it's not too bad to be honest. Still early days. Only started the podcast late February, early March this year.
Yep, yep,
So it's mostly based on. I'm focusing on YouTube itself at the moment, but I'm also putting the podcast out through Podbean, which then obviously goes out to Apple Podcasts.
yeah, cool.
So yeah, getting a little bit of traction. I think on YouTube I've got about 2,800 subscribers, and I think
That's good.
the viewers, yeah, the viewers sort of range between say 740 views to maybe 1,400 views. So it's
Yeah,
not too bad
cool.
at the moment. But I've just hired a good friend of mine to help me out with some marketing and just do some more sort of targeted marketing mostly through Facebook and Twitter as well.
Yeah,
Obviously,
awesome.
those spaces are quite big for crypto and stuff. So
Mm,
yeah, just trying to get the name out there for now. And like you kind of just sort of mentioned, I want this space to kind of be like an educational platform first, and then also sort of slightly entertaining. No one wants to just sit there and listen to someone babble on and it be boring. So it's got to be educational and entertaining at the same time.
yeah.
So that's sort of the main goal at the moment is to just get the name out there and get on really interesting guests. Like I've had some pretty just some luck go my way basically with getting people like yourself, relatively well known in the Bitcoin space, especially within Australia domestically. And I've
Mm,
had some people jump on, that are relatively high profile in the space, which is cool. So
yeah,
hopefully just
awesome.
sort of keep building and go from there.
Yeah, cool. Very
Oh,
good.
awesome. Adam, look, thanks so much for your time. I really appreciate you jumping on.
Yep, thank you. See ya.
Thank you.